Arma 3 is one of those lofty games that many people consider too much to learn, and I won't lie to you, there is a ton that this game has to teach you, but you don't need to know 100% of everything to get thousands of hours of enjoyment out of it. In fact, I myself have been playing regularly since 2015, and I have just over 4,000 hours in-game, and I'm still learning new things to this day. So in the aspect of learning, I decided I would make this video to cover 20 things I wish I knew when starting Arma 3. Some of these topics are my personal pick, but I also picked some great topics from the community post I recently had asking you, the audience, what tip for new players you would like to bestow. Of course, this does not begin to scratch the surface of what you can do in Arma 3, but it will give you a solid foundation to build off of, and if you're an aspiring player that has been on the fence about getting this incredible game, then hopefully you'll decide to take the plunge and join what is one of the best gaming experiences of the 21st century. So with that, let's dive into 20 new player tips for 2023. At number 20 is the DLC and how they work within Arma 3. I'll admit it took me a little while to fully understand the rationale behind the DLC and its availability to players that haven't bought them, but I really like the way Bohemia Interactive handled their implementation. All of the DLCs come with new assets to use in-game, and some come with new mechanics. The mechanics that are introduced, everyone gets for free, as they are baked into the game code, and it wouldn't make sense for some players to get them and for others not to get them. For example, in the Jets DLC, launched in 2017, they released 3 new aircraft, which are, of course, physical assets that we can use. However, mechanics-wise, the entire Arma 3 platform received an aircraft flight profile rework, radar enhancement and redesign, as well as tweaks to how the stealth works in-game. All players, whether they bought the DLC or not, received these mechanics upgrades. Now, if you didn't buy the Jets DLC and you're playing on a server that has one of the new aircraft, once you try to get in it, you're denied access, stating that you don't own the DLC. Now, there are assets that came with the Jets DLC like the USS Freedom aircraft carrier and USS Liberty destroyer that are physical assets people who don't own the DLC can use, but they can't spawn them in the editor. What they can do is they can use them in multiplayer and they won't be barred from joining the server. If you are curious about what assets are free to use and which ones require you to actually buy and own the DLC, check out the Arma 3 fandom site for each DLC and that will lay it out neatly for you. At number 19 is that you can draw on the map. Yep, you heard that right. You can open your map when in game with other players or by yourself and draw on it, making your own custom markers, waypoint paths, or maybe even your own porta-shitter art for the rest of the team to discover and enjoy. Holding left control and left clicking the mouse lets you drag and draw, which is honestly very handy when explaining an operation and you want everyone on the same sheet of music as you lay out your plan. If you happen to draw something in error, simply hovering your mouse over it and hitting delete makes it go away. Now that you're armed with this knowledge, there should be no excuse for people to not know what the fuck is going on in missions. At number 18 is how to play with your friends online. This game is 10 years old and people still struggle with how to simply hop in with a buddy or two and play. I don't blame you, it's not laid out perfectly anywhere, and I will do my best to explain the different ways here. You will first need to know and understand the 2 different types of hosting, which are dedicated and non-dedicated. Non-dedicated is what a majority of the people will be using, and this is where you create a temporary server to play on while you're actively in it. And once everyone leaves the server, it shuts down. This server is effectively hosted on the local machine of whomever creates it and runs their mission file. The mission file is built in the editor and can be exported to multiplayer missions, to then be selected from the available missions when creating your server. Once created, people can start joining in on the slots that you made playable in the editor. Dedicated hosting means you're using a hosting service like Host Havoc, Apex Hosting, or you actually have an Arma 3 server built and running on a second PC that you own and everyone can join in on. These servers can stay up as long as the machine hosting them is online, and this is how people have 24/7 servers that have a full day-night cycle, as well as combat operations around the clock. So those are the 2 types of hosting. Now we'll explore the specific connection methods. The first method is through LAN or local area network. This is assuming your friends are in the same house or on the same local area network as you. Simply go to your server browser, hit host server, And when you're creating the server, ensure the server type is on LAN. Once you create the mission and you're on the select role screen, the server has effectively been created, and your friends should be able to find your server and join you. They can either find you in the LAN tab, the Friends Servers tab, if you're friends on Steam, or they can right-click on you in the Steam Friends list and hit Join Session. You all need to be showing online on Steam before starting the mission, otherwise the Join Session option may not be available. Arma's kind of weird. The mission itself does not start until the first player is in the game world, so if you have time-sensitive objectives built into the mission, this is an important thing to know. The other connection method is through the internet option, which functions similarly as LAN, but just simply over the internet. You can find your friend's server the same way as mentioned in LAN, except I highly recommend using Direct Connect if you know their IP address. All they need to do is Google their IP address and provide you with the port they use to create the server, which is typically 2302 by default. Hit OK and their server should pop right up and be available for you to join. This is a much faster way than hitting the internet tab, waiting for the thousands of servers to populate, and then scrolling through and looking for whatever they named the server. Or using the filters, which the filters are good, but it's kind of a pain in the ass. Just use Direct Connect, honestly. Trust me, save yourself the time. If for some reason your friends' servers aren't showing up at all and no one can join each other by using the methods I just mentioned, whomever created the server may need to port forward through their router and open ports 2302 through 2306 for Arma 3's use. There is a fantastic guide that I use to accomplish this, and I'll post it in the description below. It's honestly not as bad as people make it out to be. At number 17 is to simply join an Arma 3 unit. It doesn't have to be a full milsim unit or anything like that, but you'd be surprised how many other people just like you are new to the game and want to learn together, and you'd be doubly surprised by how eager many veteran Arma 3 enjoyers are to teach new players and show them the ropes. Arma 3 is positively outstanding as a single-player game, and many people choose to play it that way, and that is perfectly fine. I commend you for it because that's where I started and logged probably my first 1,000 hours. But eventually, I wanted to start enjoying these combined arms operations with friends and found myself joining a unit called Air Combat Command back in 2017, and we had an absolute blast flying together. If you're wondering how to join a unit or which one is the right fit for you, the Arma 3 official units website is still active and lets you browse literally over 100,000 units that have been created over the years. You can browse by size and age to better help narrow down the unit. Alternatively, you're more than welcome to join my Discord channel and browse through my units channel, where many awesome units put their applications out there for you to join, as well as a little bit about who they are and what they do. Arma 3 gameplay is at its absolute best when you play with friends, and there is simply no other game like it anywhere. At number 16 is getting a sound mod. There are two primary giants in the sound mod community in Arma 3, and that is Dynasound 2 by Lakesman and Jocko, and JSRS by Lord Jarhead, both of which can be downloaded for free on the Mods Workshop. I won't go into super detail on them, and instead I'm going to let you experience them on your own, but Dynasound 2 is meant to enhance more of the vanilla Arma 3 weapon and ambient sounds, providing much more punching sounding weapons fire and explosions. This mod is coupled well with enhanced soundscape, which adds environmental reverb sound effects when fired in different locations like hillsides, forests, and urban areas. Conversely, JSRS was built with that same soundscape enhancement in mind, but focuses on being more compatible with mods like RHS, Cup, and Tier 1 weapons. Thousands of sound effects have been added to enhance the overall sound experience in Arma 3. I recommend giving these both a try and seeing which you enjoy more. You can have the best gameplay and visuals in the world, but if your sound is lackluster, that's a huge L, so beef it up with one of these mods. At number 15 are the crazy amount of combat stances you can employ as an infantryman. By default, you can spawn in with your weapon raised and ready to fire. By holding control and using the WAS and D keys, you can change your stance to manipulate your character's body in a direction indicated. For example, Control A will cause your right-handed weapon to be placed in your left arm so you can better engage enemies around a corner without exposing your body as much as you would if you just charged out there and turned around. You can also change stances while crouched and in prone to give yourself the full range of options when engaging the enemy. This is incredibly helpful in PvP as your mind is trained to notice a standing figure, and bodies laying on the ground are usually dead. Usually. Exploit this fact by playing possum and getting the jump on your enemies. At number 14 are the use of triggers in the editor. Triggers are one of the cornerstones of mission making, and if you're trying to do literally anything in the way of mission design, you'll want to familiarize yourself with how triggers work. This won't be a complete overview of triggers in their entirety, but more of an example of how they can be employed to create an immersive battle space. Let's say you want to create a task, and in this task, you want your player to have to pick something up before moving on to the next task. To do this, you'll need to manipulate the trigger using script commands specific to what you're trying to accomplish. This can be a little confusing at times, but there are a ton of great tutorial makers out there on YouTube who walk you through step by step on how to get them working. Some of the best trigger tutorials I've personally found from other YouTubers are Daisy Medic, Gunter Severlo, and Online Combat Battalion, just to name a few. Triggers add a ton to your immersion during a mission, even with the simplest things. If you're interested in how I created this little sequence in the video, let me know in the comments and I will be happy to make a video on it if there's enough interest. At number 13 is the ability to edit vehicle appearances. Now, it's not going to be available for every single vehicle, but most, if not all, vanilla Arma 3 vehicles are editable, as well as many vehicles from large mods like Cup and RHS. There's two ways to do this. First is to place the vehicle in the editor and then right-click and hit Edit Vehicle Appearance. Once loaded, navigate up to the top left and click the puzzle piece. This will open up the option menu for an additional items the vehicle has the capability to carry, like gear, equipment, anti-RPG slat armor, etc. You can also click on the paint icon to see if there's any alternative camo schemes for the vehicle has to offer. Alternatively, if you're already in-game and have Zeus enabled, you can open Zeus, edit the local assets so you can change their characteristics, and then double-click on the asset and hit Garage. This will open up the same interface, but will happen to be real-time and in the game. Even with other players in the game with you, they'll see the changes that you're making. If you have multiple assets selected, you can click Apply All to change them all at once so you don't have to do this 3 damn times or more. To apply the changes, simply close the interface. At number 12 is that Arma 3 has a dynamic weather system actively in place to give you the sense of a living world. This is often one of the most overlooked aspects of Arma 3 and indeed many games across the action franchise, but is one of the most immersive qualities in my opinion. The campaign missions are very good about having varied weather effects added like fog, rain, and varied types of cloud coverage. Many player-made missions will also incorporate these effects to immerse their players and draw them into the operation. Take, for example, the difference in landing a jet on a calm, beautiful day as opposed to landing in high winds and rain. Most Chad pilots relish in the idea of harder landings, and in these situations, mods like plane turbulence and aerial warfare enhance somehow add even more challenge and boost the skill required. The challenge is even higher for carrier-borne forces, as seen by this quick comparison. The system is designed to either increase or decrease the weather effects in real time, so if a mission starts really foggy, the mission maker can tell the system to gradually lift the fog after a certain period of time, and vice versa. At number 11 is the ability to post your weapon against cover. To do this, you need to be standing next to an object that is of sufficient height, which will be indicated by the stance overlay in the top right corner. Then simply hit C by default, and your player will post up on the cover and stabilize their weapon. This will greatly increase your accuracy and provide you cover for your midsection and down. However, your head and shoulders and arms are still going to be exposed, so there's definitely a drawback. Still, 50% cover is a lot better than 0. You don't need a bipod to do this either. However, the bipod will allow you even greater accuracy when combined with this tactic. At number 10 is independent head movement, or free look. In Arma 3, your head is an independent body part, so you can use it to look around freely when on foot by double tapping Alt. This is super handy if you want to keep your weapon on a target, but check your flanks quickly. Using head tracking software like TrackIR5 is one of the best ways to utilize this feature both on the ground and in the air. After about 2 or 3 days of using Track IR5 for the first time back in 2016, I literally could not function without it after that. I was hooked. My enjoyment in the air and on the ground went through the roof, so thank you Bohemia for making this one of Arma's best added features. At number 9 is the different ways you can laze a target. The first method is by self-lasing using your laser designator. Pro tip, make sure after equipping the laser designator that you take some designator batteries with you, otherwise the laser won't function. Then when you pull it up, press the fire button to activate the laser. You can see it's active by the red laser indicator on the screen. Now any aircraft within distance that's armed with a laser guided bomb will see the laser and is programmed to attack it if their stance is set to anything but careless. Simply sit back and watch the fireworks. This also works for friendly players in aircraft as well, who can hone in on your laser designator and track its movement to a target. This term is called buddy lasing and is the most accurate way to ensure the enemy that's harassing ground forces the most is eliminated first. Aircraft also come equipped with targeting pods and have the ability to self-laze if the ground forces can't laze themselves. This method will require coordination between the JTAC and the pilot to ensure that the correct target is hit and friendly fire is avoided. At number 8 is the ability to take control of drones using a UAV terminal. To do this, your character will need a UAV terminal in their terminal inventory position. Then, once the game is loaded, you use the action menu to open your UAV terminal. This terminal will have the drop-down menus for all active UAVs in the area. When you select the UAV, you can select between the driver or the gunner. UAVs that are on a loiter waypoint are great for ISR and strike missions when ground forces need an assist or heavier assets aren't available. Likewise, smaller ISR drones like the Darter are great for scouting ahead of main attacks to get accurate intel on enemy positions and strength. For direct assaults, the Stomper is a great option when you don't want to risk losing troops, providing light armor and direct fire support. For those who own the Apex DLC, the MQ-12 Falcon drone attack helicopter is available and is an awesome display of firepower in the right hands. At number 7 is the zeroing feature for small arms and vehicle weapons. This feature isn't anything super new. I'm fairly certain that it has been in the Arma engine since like Operation Flashpoint, but it's a lot of fun to use and get right. Using a laser rangefinder, you can hit the T button to zero the distance as noted at the top center. This gives you the exact distance to whatever target you're looking at. Your sniper rifle will be zeroed to 400 meters by default, so by holding control and mouse scrolling up, you can adjust the zeroing of the rifle by 100 meter increments. This target is about 689 meters from my position, as indicated by the laser rangefinder. Dropping the rangefinder, I adjust the zeroing of the rifle to 700 meters, the closest of increment of 100 to my exact distance. Now, all I need to do is put the crosshair over the target and fire. For vehicles, it's even easier. As the gunner, you can use the same key by default, which is T, to zero your machine guns and main cannon. This is absolutely necessary for long-range combat, especially considering how accurate the AI is. The machine guns only work to a certain distance though, so be wary of this when engaging infantry at extreme ranges. At number 7 is the virtual arsenal and how to activate it and use it. Quite possibly one of the biggest draws of Arma 3 is its virtual arsenal feature, where you can plug and play with gear and weapons to your heart's content, making all kinds of awesome combinations. Many people aren't aware that they can use it pretty much any time they want if they have Zeus enabled, or place a predetermined object in a mission using the editor. First, I'll show you how to get it working in Zeus. For reference, I'm using Zeus Enhanced by M. Harris, so your Zeus layout may look a little different if using vanilla Zeus, but for the most part, it's going to be the same. Open Zeus and then place an object. It can literally be anything. Most mission makers prefer it to be a storage box, a locker, or something similar, right? Now, go up to F2 and then down to Modules and search Arsenal, in which case you'll find Add Full Arsenal, and just simply drag that module onto the box you placed, and boom. When you go up to this object, Arsenal should appear in your scroll menu, and you can now use it virtually mid-mission. The other way to do this is before the mission even starts, in the editor, place any one of the same objects down, just like you did in Zeus, but place the Arsenal script into the init block and hit OK. Then run your mission. The object will now act as your virtual arsenal. A third way to do this is, again, in Zeus, by simply placing an active unit and double-clicking on them, then hitting Arsenal if you're using Zeus Enhanced. While we've been on the subject of Zeus, my number 5 feature is Zeus itself. By default, the Y key will activate Zeus, but in order to get Zeus functioning, you need to sync the Game Master module to your player or set the owner within the Game Master module to your player's variable name. Make sure to open the default add-ons drop-down menu and select all add-ons, including unofficial ones. If you don't do this, you won't be able to place assets downloaded from the Steam Workshop. Once the module is set up, simply click OK, then start your game. You now have Zeus in your single-player game. Once Zeus is activated in-game, the Zeus interface will open and you'll be able to make real-time changes and adjustments to literally anything, to include the time, weather, and other assets in-game. Again, Zeus Enhanced is an amazing mod that adds a ton of quality of life changes to the Zeus experience, and I hardcore recommend this mod. If you're going to do any Zeusing at all, you definitely need this mod. At number 4 is the Warlords game mode. Have you been wanting to quickly create your own sector capture missions and play using a built-in income system to purchase equipment, weapons, and vehicles? Well, Warlords is your answer. Did you also know you could play this in single player? I've been having a lot of fun in this game mode lately, and it's pretty simple, but a lot of fun to mess around with, especially considering that the size of the engagement is completely up to you. To get this set up, you'll need to place the Warlords Init module in the editor. Then create your Warlords base modules at the locations you want both your Blue 4 and Op 4 bases to spawn. This will be your initial main operating base from which you'll start your campaign. After this is done, you'll set down all the sector modules on the towns you want to set up as capturable points. Once they're all down, right-click on them and begin syncing them together in a web-like fashion. Note that the way that they're synced determines their capture order, so make sure you're not syncing them all together and instead have them flow into one another, if that makes any sense. One of the best tutorials for a Warlords campaign setup was made by Ferris Creek, who made a playlist of videos covering specifics on how the modules work and how to get the campaign functioning. You can customize the modules within the editor to your liking and also use SQF and description files to further customize your mission by changing equipment and weapon types, as well as available factions. At number 3 is the missile top-down and direct attack modes. I'm sure there's plenty of hardcore infantry types out there that figured this out long ago, but not a lot of people know that you can select between top-down and direct attack with your anti-tank guided missiles. This will completely change the way you engage armored ground threats. As most know, tank armor is weakest on the top, so you want your missile to impact its weakest point to have the most devastating effect possible. Some lightly armored vehicles can be taken out with a single well-placed ATGM, but it's always best to take the target out as quickly and as efficiently as possible. At number 2 are editor modules for fire support and airstrikes. Honestly, the modules within the editor are an unending source of creativity and joy, and mastering how they work can be the difference between a meh game to an immersive one. Personally, I really love calling in airstrikes or calls for fire from mortars and artillery. To do this, you simply go to the systems section, navigate down to modules, find supports in the drop-down, and place a support requester module and sync it to your playable character. Then, place all the support modules you want to use in-game. You'll notice there are 2 types of each support request, with one saying virtual. What this means is that the virtual one does not require any physical assets in-game to be synced to a module in order to be called in. When using virtual, the artillery strike or transport helicopter will spawn in at the location of the module. The regular module, however, must be synced to a corresponding AI asset in-game in order to function, and also be synced back to the support requester module. The virtual one saves on in-game performance, while the standard support module provides a little bit more immersion as it uses assets that are already in the battlefield and make it feel a little bit more dynamic and lived in. Within the modules, you can then customize their cooldown time and the amount of fires that they are providing. So if you wanted to make a mission where your artillery only has a few more spare rounds they can give you due to a logistics breakdown or something, well, you can do that. To call your supports in, you'll hit 0 on your keyboard and scroll down to supports. There you'll see all the supports available to you. Make sure you're aiming at your target before you call in your artillery strike, as it's coded to drop where your crosshairs are looking. And finally, at number 1 are mods, their types, and how they work. So you've bought Arma 3 and you want to get into the mod workshop and start getting the sexiest mods available. But what does that mean for you playing on other people's servers? Well, there's two types of mods you're going to hear about: client-side and server-side mods. Client-side mods are mods that only affect you, the player, or the client that has them loaded. Examples of client-side mods are some sound and visual effects mods like Dynasound 2 or the Reduced Haze mod. These do not affect anyone else but the player that has them loaded. Now, in order to use client-side mods on a server, the server will have to allow client-side mods that are used outside of the mod list that is already loaded onto the server. Which brings me to the next type: server-side mods. These mods should be considered as a requirement to enter a server, and without them, you'll be kicked out upon joining for not meeting the minimum mod pack requirement. It will usually tell you down at the bottom left what mods you're missing, so you can go and add them to your mod list. Many servers have Discord channels where the server owner will post the mod pack in an HTML preset that you can download, and presets are amazing. For example, here is my server's preset of mods. Now let's pretend you're brand new and want to join my server. Well, you're going to need to download the mods first. You download this file, and then you drop it into your Arma 3 launcher under the Mods tab. Whatever mods you already have installed, it will now load, and whatever mods you don't have installed, it will prompt you to download. This will save you a ton of time, as the alternative is opening the mod pack and individually searching the mods on the workshop, which does work, it's just time consuming and it sucks. Mods are a fine line to walk because there's all of these incredible mods that you want to use with friends, but so many servers only allow what they allow. The reason for this is because if server owners open their server to different physical assets that aren't actually installed and running on the server, then you'll have instances where people are running around butt-ass naked or shooting weapons that no one else can see or hear. Or they'll go floating by in a vehicle that no one can see. This is why a server requires everyone to have the same mods loaded so all players can see and use the assets. And that way there's also no compatibility issues. It's a simple concept when you figure it out, but it's also kind of a confusing concept to explain, so I really hope that this laid it out in a way that made sense. Well guys, that is all I have for this video. I really hope you found some tips that were useful and that I cleared up a little bit of the muddy waters as it pertains to some of the more confusing aspects of Arma 3. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to my incredible patrons on the screen right now for keeping my Arma 3 server, Discord, and TeamSpeak alive and running. Thank you guys so much. And of course, I want to thank you, the viewer, for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Arma 3 has so much more life left in it, so if you're worried that you'll buy the game and no one will be playing, you are absolutely mistaken and should definitely join one of the best gaming experiences and communities around. Thank you all again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.